Hello， 大家好，欢迎来到日视频，我是 Jennifer。美国少数族裔媒体服务中心举办线上座谈会。
You know, this is an extremely important election, and I'm honored to be the Secretary of State. As pointed out, you know, my family was sharecroppers in Arkansas, and my parents never had a chance to vote while they were living in Arkansas. And so my father never had a chance to register to vote till he was well up in his 30s when he came to California. And my grandparents on my father's side never had a chance to vote because they died before 1965, before the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So voter suppression and other kinds of things of that nature are kind of a part of my family's history. We understand why it is important for people to vote, what happens when you do vote, but we also know what happens to a community when they don't vote, and how we have to make sure that they understand the positives of voting and also the negative impact of not voting. Sometimes people think that not voting is just a neutral act. Well, it really isn't. It's a negative act, and it's an act against the community and most of our communities that really need representation and need voice. And so I constantly emphasize folks not only why they should vote, but to try to help them, educate them as to what happens when you don't vote. And having served in a number of capacities as a school board member and assembly member and being in the political arena, I understand what happens when people dismiss communities because they don't vote regularly. And so therefore elected officials sometimes have a tendency to think they don't have to listen to us, that our needs are not really worth meeting unless there's extra resources on the table, and that we won't fight for our rights. And as a result, not voting is a really negative act that has a tendency to weaken and diminish the importance of community. So it's really, so your role as part of the media is extremely important, because oftentimes our communities don't get the kind of focus they need to have in other areas because they figure we won't vote. But we have a vested interest in making sure that that the ethnic communities know what's going on, that they get the correct information, that they understand the process, and that they're motivated to go vote. They're motivated to go vote. And so with that in mind, you know, I approach every election as if it's an extremely important election, and a recall election is very, very important because it's not just a positive thing, it's also a negative thing, that you can potentially eliminate or dismiss a person from office, not just pick a person to come into office, but really mar a person's career and history in terms of going in history as actually being taken out of office. And oftentimes the implications of that is that there's been some major wrongdoing that has occurred, that until you kind of look behind it and realize maybe there wasn't anything major that took place. I wanted you, and oftentimes much of it is driven by my passion, as you can imagine, that voting is extremely important to me, and extremely important to the communities I serve, and important to all of us. And we're in a critical period where people are voting in great numbers. And as a result of that, there's also an effort to suppress those numbers. So we want to make sure that folks understand just how important this role is, whether in every election. So my staff is going to share with you, I hope, a PowerPoint. Great, thank you. And this is concerning California's gubernatorial recall election that is going to take place, as pointed out, on September 14th, 2021. Could you go to the next page? So the question is often, why are we having a recall election? And it's amazing how many people have asked me that on a regular basis. How did we get here? What is this all about? Have we already done it? I think when it qualified for the ballot, I had a lot of people call me and ask, was the governor gone? How did this happen without them voting? And I had to try to walk them through the process of how we got to this particular place. It's been over a year, since June 10th, 2020, that the Secretary of State's office, under the direction of Mr. Padilla, approved petitions for circulation of the recall of the governor. There's a petition you have to fill out with a number of signatures and rationale that you submit to the Secretary of State. Once you do that, then the Secretary of State's office can approve petitions for you to circulate with regards to trying to get enough signatures, valid signatures, to put it on the ballot. We know that the initial effort to get the signatures in the 120 days did not happen, and as a result, the court ordered additional days because of COVID, and as a result, was given additional days in order to collect signatures. So what we have here is by April the 26th of this year, my office announced that the number of valid signatures needed had been reached, that we had gotten enough signatures, and we needed to have close to 1.5 million signatures in order to do that. It's a 12.5% is what is required of all those who voted in the last election, the last gubernatorial election is required to basically say we have enough signatures. That took, and after we did that, then of course we had to have 30 days for people to take their signatures off if they chose to. And we had over 200,000 more signatures than we needed. So therefore, it did not happen that people took the signatures off, enough signatures off. And so as a result, on July 1, we gave the official certification that we had gotten enough signatures, that we had validated those signatures and had gone through the process and therefore presented to the Lieutenant Governor the statement that my office had to present that we had enough valid signatures to actually have a recall election. It was up to the California Lieutenant Governor to basically call the recall election, and she did on July 1. She had a number, we gave her a number of dates because you have to do it within 60 to 80 days. So we gave her a number of appropriate dates that we thought would be beneficial or possible that we could do a recall election. And September 14th was one of those that fit within the 60 to 80 day time frame. It's near the end of the time frame that has been given to us by Constitution. So it's close to the 80 days than it is to the 60. And that's the date that recall will be held. And so the governor on July 1 called the recall for September 14th. At that point, we began to move forward with the things that we needed to do. We had to send out things to get people to sign up for the election, to those who wanted to run for office, to do various kinds of things, to submit their documentation. Then we've had, as you probably have seen in the paper, a number of questions about who's going to be on the ballot, who's not going to be on the ballot, all those kinds of things that go with it. So as of today, we have finally participated in all those things that are essential, and we're moving toward the election for September the 14th. So what will the ballot say? What will this ballot say? And that's one of the big questions that people have. And so we can get to the next PowerPoint page. What will the ballot say?
Interpreters are asking for a slowdown again.
Okay, so I will slow down.
Sorry.
Wow, I have to really talk slow. So what will the ballot say? Okay, the ballot will basically ask two questions. And those will be the only two questions that will be on the recall ballot. So there's not a whole lot of other things that happen. It'll ask you one question first. The most important question of all is, do you want to recall the governor? Do you want to recall Governor Gavin Newsom? And you give us a yes or no answer, yes or no. And if 50% plus one says yes, more than 50%, then the second question becomes relevant. But you'll be asked both questions. You'll be asked question one, do you want to recall the governor? Yes or no. Then your question two, so there's only two questions on the ballot. Who do you want to replace the governor? And so you get and there will be a number, there are 46 individuals who've signed up. And that sounds like a lot of people, and it is, but keep in mind, last recall election was 135 people who actually ran for governor, who ran to be a replacement candidate. The current governor cannot be a part of the replacement candidates. So that if you vote to recall the governor, you cannot then turn around and say, oh yes, I want him to be the person who replaces himself. That cannot happen. So if for some reason there's over 50% of the people who say yes, then we look to see who got the most votes, not who got 50% plus one, but who got the most. And so given the number of people running, the governor could be chosen from 30% or 25%. In other words, we'll probably not have 50% plus one given the number of people running. But if the answer is no, if there are more people who say no, I don't want to get rid of the governor. If that's the case, then all the question two becomes immaterial. It's not even, the numbers are not even looked at in question number two, because if you don't want to recall him, it doesn't matter who you want to replace him. Many of you will ask, should I vote for both individuals? And yes, you should. You should vote for both. You should, if you're going to vote, even if you vote no, you should pick a person because you would still want to have input in who becomes the governor if you choose to. But to definitely vote for the first one, which is yes or no, and then pick a person in the second half. But keep in mind, if the person if more people say no to the recall, then there is no replacement person to take place. And so that will be the main question. Question one, do you want to recall the governor? Question two, if he happens to be recalled, who would you want to replace him? Okay, so that becomes important as we do that. Some of you have already asked in the chat, how many candidates do we have? And the next page tells us there are 46 candidates, 46 certified candidates that who have provided information, who want to be replacement candidates who will be on the ballot. And there's a list of them on my website that you can just simply click on and see the list of candidates. And they range in experience level from those who've been former elected officials to those who are currently elected officials to those who are students, college students, to those who are a whole range, business individuals, housewives, movie stars, you name it. There really isn't a specific profile of the candidates that are running. There are 46 candidates. They're grouped by, we do a random selection of alphabets. So therefore that then determines who's on the ballot first, second, and third, and so forth and so on. And so that system is also explained on the Secretary of State's website. So what we have is 46 individuals who saying, if the governor's recalled, I want to be the replacement candidate. And we will be giving, and that will be on your ballot, and you will also be getting an information guide that should give you some biographical information on these individuals, as well as in the ballot, there may be there are statements from them about who they are and why they think they should be the best candidate to replace the governor. So we have 46 candidates who are running as replacement candidates. Now, the question oftentimes people say, how do I vote in this recall? How do I participate in the recall? Well, the recall election, first of all, is a statewide election. So it's run statewide and it's run by your local registrar of voters. So the first thing you want to do to make sure that you can do that is how do you participate? You participate, one is, can we change the slide? Basically, step one, you're going to check to make sure that you're registered to vote. You're going to register if necessary, and then you're going to vote. So it's a really simple process, like any other process that we have, that we run as a statewide election. Everyone who lives in California, who's a resident of California, obviously, and is not in prison. So that means everybody who's probably has access to the whole voting apparatus and the polls and what have you is eligible to register and eligible to vote. So it becomes important, one, that you check your voting status, and we'll move to the next slide. You want to check your voting status to make sure that your information is up to date. Oftentimes people have moved and done various things, and so have no idea whether or not their address is correct. And so voters, you should verify your voter registration at voterstatus.sos.ca.gov. That becomes important so that you know as early as possible whether or not your address is correct, the information on you is correct. Because the counties will start mailing out ballots August the 16th. So from today, we have about 18 days before they'll start mailing out the ballots to the various individuals who are registered to vote. So you want to check your status to make sure that all your information is up to date. Otherwise, your ballot will go out and it'll come back to the registrar of voters. If it does, you can always call them and go down there and pick it up, but it just makes it much more complicated, or you'll forget and discover that it's not there. The second thing is to register to vote if you aren't already registered to vote. This becomes important, that if your address has been changed, make sure you register to vote. And the next slide shows us that you can vote easily, you can register to vote easily online by August the 30th. And that's the date in which you can register to vote online. But keep in mind, you can register to vote up until the day of the election. What happens is that you then get a provisional type of ballot that then is held and eventually counted. But because there's no time to really verify your identity and all those kinds of things, the ballot is held and then it goes through a separate kind of process. But after August 30th, voters can take advantage of what they call the same day voter registration. That's a process where, as I said, that you can fill out a registration and vote all even on the same day. We have same day registration and vote, and you'll be like a provisional ballot that they'll hold until after the polls close that day, and then they'll count those ballots and verify the identity of those individuals who registered. Then the last step, of course, is to vote. It's just as simple. You have 2 questions to answer. We want you to vote. All active registered voters will be, first of all, will be mailed a vote by mail ballot. We are doing the process that we did this past November. We saw that works extremely well for giving people the option and choice as to how they want to vote. So your vote by mail ballot for the recall election. So you'll get a vote by mail that's a prepaid postage is on it. And it has to be postmarked and mailed back by election day and received within 7 days. So even if you mail it the day of the election and it goes to the post office and it's stamped and postmarked, it will still be counted if it gets into the registrar of voters within 7 days. It'll be among those, as we see sometimes people say there's so many ballots, so we still have to count, so forth and so on. That's a part of some of those. So if you vote by mail, make sure you get it in early. If you get it in early, then your ballot will be counted along with the other ballots that are there. But if it comes in, if you mail it the day of the election or the day before, and it comes in after the election, it still counts so long as it's received within the 7 days after the election. Voting in person, we're going to have still plenty of that so that people can vote at their polling place, as traditionally as people do. We're also going to have what they call secure drop boxes, and there'll be various places that people can drop their ballot off. I know this last time I took my ballot to my library and I voted at the library. I took my ballot there and there was a box there with someone there with the box that was locked, and I put my ballot into the secure lockbox. There's also, we'll also have early voting locations. And you can always vote at your county elections office. I've done that once or twice when I had to go out of town and didn't have an absentee ballot. I went to my county elections office. But you can also, there'll be early voting locations and voting centers. The last election, people had the ability to vote up to 11 days before the election, weekend votings, those kinds of things that make it available and easy for folks to vote. Some asked the question about security, how secure are elections? We know we've got folks who are constantly saying, I'm not sure if this is secure, if my ballot is protected, so forth and so on. So the vote by mail is very secure. And I know for generations, African Americans and others didn't trust the vote by mail system, mainly because of their negative experiences during Jim Crow, when folks wouldn't count our ballots or throw them in the trash or whatever they may be. But we've got a better system now and a much more secure system that allows your ballot to be counted. So the vote by mail is secure throughout the process. There are some safeguards that are there that help to prevent and to protect the integrity of the vote. On the next page, it shows us what vote by mail does. It allows the watermarks that are unique to each election on the ballots. Our printers must be certified by the state, so somebody can't print a whole bunch of ballots. That's not possible. The return envelopes all have unique barcodes so that your ballot is identified when it comes in, so they know it's in. Ballots are scanned to ensure that voters didn't vote elsewhere, so that we have a statewide system, so that when your ballot is scanned, if you voted somewhere else, it will immediately kick it out, and then we will know where it's been, and we will be able to look at it. So there's no possibility of voting twice. And the signatures are checked, interestingly, on every ballot before they're processed, so that vote by mail signatures are checked, and then they're checked by everyone that's there. So as a result, the signatures are checked, so people can't basically use your ballot, and they're scanned, and so therefore you get a chance to know where they are. There's also one other thing that we have that I think is kind of cool, and it's called "Where's My Ballot?" And that's on the next page. And this is kind of interesting. It's very interesting because we have this system now when you sign up at where'smyballot.sos.california.gov, you receive an automatic text message or an email or voicemail notification about your ballot. And I knew this all along, but it was really interesting to me that I knew it and I hadn't signed up for it once before, but I signed up for it in a recent special election that I was involved with my daughter's election. And I thought, let me see how this works. So I signed up for it, and I was just so shocked and tickled pink when the thing beeped in about a day and a half, and it said that they had got my ballot and it had been counted. I was, I felt so important at that moment because I knew my ballot had gotten in and it had been counted. And so that gives you an additional assurance that that you're not just putting your ballot into some dark hole and nobody even knows it's there. You get a notification that says, hey, your ballot, your individual ballot has been counted. And that gives you some assurance, because when you put it in the box, you're wondering if people are paying attention to it. And so therefore they are. So let me give you some key dates to remind you about the election that's coming up. And it's coming up fast. I mean, it really is coming up fast. We have, as some of you mentioned, we probably have about 8 weeks for this election to take place. On August the 16th, the counties must start mailing out ballots by the 16th of August. So they have to begin to send out the ballots. Our information guide goes out on August the 24th. And this is and my staff is proofing it now. This is an information guide that explains all the process for everyone. It helps them to understand the dates, so they know what they should expect, as well as who they should contact for additional information. Keep in mind, August the 30th is the last day for voters to register easily online. They can register after that, but they can do online registration for voting and on August the 30th and actually get a ballot by mail. From the 31st to the 14th, those 2 weeks, is when you can actually do conditional or same day voting registration. So you still can register to vote. If someone says, oh my God, I missed August 31st, 30th, I really want to vote, they can still register to vote and on a conditional same day registration process, and they will vote come September 14th. The last day for the counties to send vote by mail ballots is September the 7th. So there's a rolling thing that counties are sending out vote by mail ballots. And so therefore, if you register by the 30th, you should get a ballot by the 7th of September, that time frame. Election day is on the 14th, and polling places open from 7 a.m. in the morning to 8 p.m. And that will be important for you to know that they will be open. You can check with also your registrar of voters concerning other areas, other places where they have an opportunity to vote and to basically do the election. September 16th through the 14th of October is the official canvass date in terms of making sure that that it happens. In September 22nd, October 22nd, we will issue a certificate of elections to the elected candidates in the recall. So, and who's been successful, you'll hear a lot on the news, but obviously October 22nd is the official date when all ballots have been counted and the election has been decided. So that's the basic information. Any